I'd like to call to order the February 3rd, 2015 regular scheduled meeting of the Davie County Board of Education. And the first item on the agenda is to adopt the agenda. Do we have a motion to adopt the agenda? We have a motion by Mr. Drexler. Do we have a second? We have a second by Ms. Livengood. All in favor? Motion carries 6-0. At this time, we're moving on to the closed session portion of the meeting, and I will need a motion to go into closed session to preserve the attorney-client privilege pursuant to the North Carolina General Statutes listed on our agenda to discuss personnel matters protected by state law and student matters protected by state law and FERPA. Do I have a motion? I have a motion by Ms. Owens. I have a second by Mr. Drexler. All in favor? Motion carries 7-0. We're now in closed session. Welcome. I'd like to reconvene the February 3rd, 2015 regular scheduled meeting of the Davie County Board of Education. We're glad to have you tonight. If you would, please bow with me for the invocation. As we gather this evening, I express thanks for this day and all of its blessings. I ask this board to be mindful of the business we are about to undertake. We're thankful for everyone in attendance tonight. Further, we're thankful for the opportunities to govern and the freedoms we enjoy. We pause to remember the students, faculty members, and families in our system and community who are facing challenges. Our positive thoughts are with them. As always, we seek wisdom to make the best decisions for the students and citizens of Davie County. Amen. At this time, I would like to ask the Scout Troop Pack 574 to come up and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for coming, guys. We appreciate that. At this time, we're moving on to approval of minutes from our January 6th and our January 6th regular scheduled meeting, and also our January 12th special called meeting, joint meeting with the commissioners. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes? Have a motion by Mr. Drexler. Do we have a second? Have a second by Mr. Junker. All in favor? Motion carries 6-0. At this time, we're moving on to the important dates, and I will highlight a few dates. On Thursday of this week, from 5:30 to 8, the board will be at advisory council meetings with Coolamy, Moxville, and South Davie. We go out annually and have those meetings and really enjoy hearing from the school sites and concerns and achievements, and we enjoy that. On the 17th, Thursday the 17th at 3:30, there's a spelling bee here in the boardroom. There's a couple North Carolina School Board Association functions on the 18th and 19th. And then the board will be at lunch at Moxville Elementary at 11:30 on February the 19th, Thursday, February the 19th. And then our next regular scheduled meeting will be back here on March the 3rd at 6 o'clock. And at this point, I will turn it over to Dr. Hartness for the superintendent's report.
Members of the board, I want to thank each of you who attended the Chamber of Commerce Gala event last week. You all surprised me, and I want to tell you how fortunate I am to work with such a fine group of people and be supported by this board. We have a lot of work ahead of us to continue on a path of excellence, but it's fun work, and I'm just honored to be your superintendent. So thank you for supporting me at that event. Just one thing that I really want to point out, and that's the whole idea of testing and accountability tonight. Aaron Full is not with us, but you have heard from Aaron a number of times about our school performance. Aaron provided you our school performance and accountability data back in the fall when that was released. And as you recall, during that time, we said that A through F grades would be published by the state of North Carolina. We anticipated those in October. They were delayed till after the election. Those will be released this Thursday on February the 5th. And I just want to give you that heads up because I'm sure that you will see some media coverage of that release this week. Elementary and middle schools will receive a single letter grade based on their performance, end of grade performance in math, reading, and science. Middle schools, and that's middle schools as well. High schools will be graded on end of course tests, graduation rates, and ACT scores. The letter grade will be based on 80% proficiency and 20% growth. And there was a lot of debate in the legislature about how those are weighted, and that's how everything shook out in the legislation. We've seen quite a few different reactions from different school districts in the area on the release of these grades. One of our neighboring districts has published their own report card and took into account some other factors that they considered to be important. There have been other boards of education who have passed resolutions in opposition to the A through F and asking for the legislation to be repealed. Regardless, those are going to be released this week. What we know, I think, as an educator is that we should never judge a child on a single letter grade on their report card or their performance on a single test on a single day of the 180 days that we have them. And I strongly feel like schools should also not be graded with just a single grade. There's a lot that goes into what takes place in our public schools. So it'll be interesting to see how this is perceived by the public. I know that there have been groups who are adamantly opposed to putting a label on our schools this way. So the approach that I suggest, I don't think that Davie County Schools will be bragging about our schools that performed really well or pointing out schools that want to perform higher in the future because of this letter grade. We have put those performance scores out there. We know where our deficiencies are. We know where our strengths are. And this school district consistently ranks in the top 10% in the state. It's something we should be proud of and continue to strive to do better. I'm really proud of the way our curriculum department and our principals are working with teachers and our instructional coaches and the folks in our schools to continue to improve our performance. But we have a lot to be proud of, but this announcement this week will just be another blip on the map to me. Someone shared an article with me last week, and I've shared that. I've linked it to your agenda item from the BBC, and it talks about testing and accountability in England. And we hear a lot of discussion about how do we compare internationally. And this article just was kind of took me back because in England, they're grappling over the same issues we are in North Carolina, creating higher standards from new standards, new assessments for those new standards, and how to grade schools. So I thought it was very interesting that across the ocean, we're dealing with the same things. And internationally, people are struggling with how do we rank schools? How do we gauge performance of students? How do we gauge performance of teachers? It's an international issue. I thought you might find that article very interesting. With all this testing in mind, we constantly hear concerns as educators about the amount of testing that we do in public schools. And we have voiced some of our concerns with the Department of Public Instruction and state leadership on the amount of testing that we do. I'm encouraged that there is now a testing and accountability task force that's a subset of the State Board of Education that will be making some recommendations to the state board in this year. We have a voice at the table, and we're giving some feedback to that task force on what we feel like is most appropriate. And one of the things we feel like is most appropriate is using testing to help us guide instruction and not as a single day at the end of the year to determine how the child did, because by that time, it's May, it's June. They're moving on to the next grade level. So in Davie County Schools, we have formative assessments that we've used and used quite well to help us guide instruction. This task force right now is looking at how can the state use those formative assessments. And what we mean by formative assessments, when we were all in class, your teachers gave you regularly tests throughout the school year to gauge your performance. The teacher went and graded those tests and then said, okay, Darren and Paul are deficient in these two areas, and Barbara and Carol, they didn't get this, so I need to reteach this or redo that. That's how education works. So if we have a set of standards in North Carolina, and they'll debate those from now forevermore, if we have a set of standards and we have curriculum, formative assessments are what we call benchmark assessments. They're given periodically throughout the school year to help guide instruction and give teachers feedback. There ought to be a way that we can determine growth of students through those formative assessments, and we can gauge the performance of schools. That's the direction that we're hoping that this task force will move toward. Those are some of the initial recommendations, which are pretty well received by several organizations and by some of our government officials. So we're hoping that as we guide that process and give feedback, that we can give teachers assessments that really mean something, that can help children and not just be a look back on the school year. There's some political ramifications of modifying the whole testing and accountability program, because there's some people who have hooked teacher evaluations to those assessments. There have been some who have hooked labels or A through F grades for schools to those assessments, and we'll always have to have some measure of how we're doing. But I have always been an advocate that if we're going to measure, let's use measures that can actually help us teach children. So I'm encouraged by what I'm hearing. I spent 2 hours yesterday afternoon with 2 other superintendents and a member of the State Board of Education talking about this and trying to help advise them on best ways that we can use assessments to help teachers. So I think there's some good things coming there, and we will keep you in the loop. And I have a meeting next week with a group of our lead teachers and some of our instructional coaches and curriculum leaders as to how Davie County Schools can help frame and guide some of this work. So that's my update, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for that update. We appreciate all the hard work that you've been doing on testing and assessments. I know we hear it a lot from concern from parents and certainly from teachers as well, that's a huge concern. There certainly needs to be ways to judge and know that our children are achieving, but to your point, they need to be used for the right reasons. At this time, we're moving on to the architect's report, and I will call on Wesley Curtis to come up and tell us how we're doing.
Chairman Fuller, Board, Dr. Hartness, certainly we are happy to be at this juncture. We have just, we're in the process of just completing the plans. And we've gone through a long period of design, which it involves a lot of person's time. I mean, we stand up here and kind of give a report on it, but you just don't know how many people are really involved to really get into the details so that we can accurately reflect what it is that we're trying to build for you. So I'll give a quick update. First, kind of a past 30 days. As I mentioned, we've been working on continuing to complete the construction documents. That includes building as well as the phase 2 of site. As you know, the phase 1 is still underway. That's later in my agenda there. But we've been working with administrative staff continually, even as late as yesterday. And we're continue to get information and updates from them as we continue to refine the drawings. Also, we're continuing to refine the site layouts and plans as late as today. So it's one of those, it's the part of this process that for us has been really interesting because we have really been integrated in working together and coming up with what it is to really meet your needs. And it's good to have a client that is willing to do that. Sometimes clients will say, here's what I think I want, and they give it to you, and you don't see them again for 6 months and come up with something, and hopefully that's it. But we have really been working together to come up with a plan I think everybody will be happy with. Also, in this past 30 days, we've had pre-qualification of contractors. I think that's going to be discussed a little later on in the agenda. And going forward, schedule-wise, we'll do a quick review of where we see things are at this point. We're looking to advertise bids February the 15th. That is, we'll put it in the paper so that contractors be aware that drawings can be picked up around the February the 20th. From that, we'll have a pre-bid conference in March, March the 10th, and we're looking to receive bids on March the 26th. With an award somewhere in the range of April, we'll get the bids in, have time to evaluate those bids, and from our end as well as give recommendations on your end so that your staff can kind of come back and we can have a recommendation for you to make the award. Once we get the low bidder, that will be within budget, and we'll look to try to begin construction somewhere around May the 1st. If that's the case, we give notice to proceed around May the 1st, that means substantial completion will happen somewhere around May the 1st, 2017. It's amazing how time flies because it seems like 2 years. It's a long time, but it goes fast. So are there any questions? I just want to give you a quick update of just kind of where we've been the past 30 days and sort of where we're expecting to go in the next 30 days. All right? Thank you.
Thank you, Wesley. We appreciate that. It's moving forward, and we're counting down the days here till we see some concrete and bricks moving in. At this point, we're moving on to recognitions of staff and students, and I will call on Ms. Noelle Grady-Smith.
Hello. Ladies and gentlemen and members of the board, I would like to present Amy Stokes. Amy Stokes is our 2015 Davie County Teacher of the Year. Now, growing up in Davie County has many unique advantages, especially if you then return to the county and begin your life and start your family. Amy Stokes and her husband have had just such an opportunity. Walking into Coolamy Elementary School as a kindergartner with the pride that it was finally her time to go to school, and then working her way through Davie County High School, Amy nurtured a particular dream. Now, this was not a secret dream. In fact, if you knew Amy, you knew that she loved to ask questions and she loved school. Amy held tight to her dream of being the best teacher she could possibly be. Encouraged by her mentor, Amy applied for and was accepted as a North Carolina Teaching Fellow at Appalachian State University, where she graduated magna cum laude in 2000. While completing her student teaching at Cornatzer, Amy was asked to interview for a position at Coolamy Elementary School. She completed her student teaching on one day, and she began teaching as a full-time teacher at Coolamy the next day. Serving as a kindergarten teacher for 2 years, she found her true home in first grade and stayed for 11 years with first graders. God bless you. That's such a pivotal year. It's such a welcoming teacher that has to be there. This year, Amy has embraced yet a new challenge in her usual gracious style. She is now sharing her skills with the entire Coolamy faculty and their students in the capacity of a reading intervention specialist. While some of her students come to school dealing with struggles and obstacles, she firmly believes that you meet the student where he or she is, and you take them to a new place. You don't wish away their circumstances, but you seize the opportunity to make a real difference in their lives. Amy believes that her greatest accomplishments can be seen in the achievements and lives of her students. We also see her accomplishments in the faces of her own children, her loving family, and the embrace of her community. Davie County Schools is proud to honor Amy Stokes as one of our stars, our 2015 Teacher of the Year. And I would like to point out that you can read more about Amy in the Davie Life issue. We'd like to present you with this, and I have a little pin for you, and I'm going to just give it to you instead of trying to put it on you. And Mr. Dressler, presentation.
Amy, on behalf of all the board members, I'd like to thank you for holding on to your dream and hope that you will stay right here in Davie County and carry it out.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We won't let her go anywhere.
Congratulations, Amy. Thanks for all your hard work. At this time, we're moving on to the consent agenda, and I will ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda. We have a motion by Ms. Livengood. Do we have a second? We have a second by Mr. Junker. All in favor, please raise your, all right, motion carries 6-0. About that. Moving on to business items, and the first business item on the agenda is finance lottery funds for Davie County High School, and I will turn this over to Ms. Smink.
Thank you, Chairman Fuller, members of the board, Dr. Hartness. You have before you this evening a request, an application for the use of $500,000 of lottery funds, and these will be used for expenses related to the construction of the new Davie County High School. This will be our second drawdown in our commitment to use $2 million of lottery funds toward the construction of the high school. This is our second $500,000 drawdown. It's our request that you approve this application.
Thank you, Ms. Smink. At this time, I will ask for a motion to approve this request. Yes, sir.
You stated that this is a second draw of 500,000. And is this draw for the extension of a grading contract?
I'll address that, Mr. Drexler. As you recall, when we talked about the cash flow of the lottery funds, we drew down some money back in the fall. We said that we'd make a second drawdown in March of 2015, a third in March of 16, and a fourth at the end of the project in March of 17. So this fits right in with that schedule.
I thought I read in my agenda information that this money not to exceed $289,550 of this $500,000 would be used to extend the grading portion of the contract.
The lottery monies can be used to extend that contract. I mean, it's cash flow that's going to come in for the entire project, and that extension is our next agenda item. We can talk about that. But yes, it could be used for that cash flow.
And if it's not to exceed 289, why are we drawing down 500,000 at this point?
So we would draw down that amount, and it is there for the continuation of the project. So it would be, and this is the timeline that we've told the county that we would draw down the monies.
This $500,000 is not specific for this contract extension. That's not what that's for. No, huh? I mean, it could, she may use some of that money to pay for this contract extension, should we approve it. But there are ongoing bills associated with the project now that would be used for, I'm sure. So we have a request to approve this recommendation. Do we have a motion for that?
I make a motion that we approve the request.
Okay. So we have a motion by Ms. Owens. We have a second by Mr. Drexler. Do we have any other discussion or any other questions about it? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Yes, ma'am. At this time, moving on to item B. This is facilities rough grading extension, and I'll call on Dr. Hartness.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before you have an agenda item and a couple attachments that outline this agenda item, and the staff is asking the board to authorize us to extend the rough grading contract with Eastern Structures through this exchange or extension that has been presented to you in writing. I asked John Gray if he would come forward for a minute and give you an overview of what this extension includes and the justification for an extension.
Thank you, Dr. Hartness. I believe in your agenda packets you have a letter from me to Dr. Hartness, and behind that there is an exhibit. And in that exhibit, you'll notice that there's a shaded area, and the shaded area is the area between the Little League Road and the middle school, actually the tennis courts. And that shaded area under the contract that's under construction now was to be cleared and grubbed, but not stripped of its topsoils. For a couple of reasons that we didn't include it in the first project was that there was a question about our ability to work across Little League Road effectively without obscuring or harming it. We've done that. We wanted to be sure that we had adequate areas for reclaiming the sandiest material we have on site so we could move it where we needed it. We've done that. And we just wanted to know more about the project. We had an upset goal of not spending any more than $3 million on this rough grade portion when we went into it. We are comfortably under that. And now we see the opportunity to allow this material to flow into the area of the project that we've identified for borrow and waste and that sort of thing. So it's very economical for us to extend the project. It's about an 11% plus or minus extension of the project budget for the contractor portion of it. And we would recommend that while the ground is open and Philip is moving, this is our most economical time. Our pricing is excellent, to go ahead and include this portion of it in the project.
So again, Mr. Chairman, we would request the board consider authorizing us to work with the contractor, our architect and engineer, in extending his contract.
Okay, so we have a request from the staff to extend the contract of Eastern Structures to accommodate the work that's highlighted in the exhibit that's attached, which would be the remainder of the stadium area and some other areas beside of that, which was not in the grading contractor's original scope, but it's in the total project. We're pulling it from one scope, one contract, moving to another, basically. More economical to do that. Is there any questions? Anybody have any questions for Mr. Gray or? Okay. All right, seeing no questions, I'll ask for a motion to approve this recommendation. We have a motion by Ms. Horn. We have a second by Mr. Junker. Do we have any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Motion carries 7-0. I'm sorry, 6-0. I'm used to. At this time, we're moving on to advertisement for bids for our high school project, and I will turn that over to Dr. Hartness.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I would just say that we have been extremely pleased with Philip Shore and Brandon Shore and Eastern Structures, Davy Grading. They've done an outstanding job on this site during the Phase 1 rough grading, and this just makes a lot of economical sense for us to continue to work with them while they're on site, while we're in this transition of bidding the project to get a general contractor. It keeps the project moving along. There's nothing that if this extension would do that's not a part of the project already. So it just keeps the project moving along and will ensure that we can stay in our timeline. So thank you for working with us on that. The next item on your agenda is an advertisement for bids. And essentially, we're at the point where, as you saw in the timeline that Wesley presented tonight, that we're ready to bid this project. And staff has been heavily involved in reviewing this project and reviewing the plans. I know there's conversations with the Department of Insurance, Department of Public Instruction, and all the other people that have to sign off on this. We're coming down to the close of putting this thing out on the street for bid. And we are just asking for a motion to authorize the staff to work with Walter Robbs to advertise for the bids for the new Davie County High School.
Thank you, Dr. Hartness. So we have a request to authorize staff to work with the architect to advertise for bids our high school project. Do we have a motion? We have a motion by Ms. Horn. Do we have a second? We have a second by Ms. Owens. Do we have discussion or questions?
I don't have any questions. I just have a comment. I just want to thank all of our architects and our staff for working so well together and for coming here every month to give these presentations and these updates, because I think that's just invaluable, and I appreciate the time that you put into that and for being here, so. And I love the fact that you wear black and orange every single time you come. Your closets are bound to have a whole new wardrobe, so thank you.
Mr. Gray certainly has school spirit, as does Mr. Pierce. He may have an alternative reason for wearing it. So we have a motion and a second on the floor. If we don't have any other discussion or comments or questions, I will call for a vote. All in favor? Motion carries 6-0. At this time, we're moving on to student accountability, alternate accountable model for, and I will ask Ms. Weatherman, I apologize, to come up and talk to us about that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Dr. Hartness, members of the community. As the principal of Central Davie Academy, the alternative school for Davie County Schools, it's my pleasure to speak before you tonight to describe to you the 4 new options proposed by the state for the alternative school accountability model. As you all know, alternative schools function very differently than traditional schools. In order to assess accountability, it takes a certain number of students in any subgroup to really get valid data. So the accountability model for alternative schools has always differed from traditional schools in the way they assess our progress, our growth for our students, and our achievement. DPI has looked at reorganizing the way alternative education handles accountability and has developed 4 options for a new model. Does somebody know if that's going to go up there? Okay, all right, great. Didn't know if the community needed to look at it. The alternative options proposed, option A is that the alternative schools could participate in performance goals, which would basically ask for the proficiency level at a school that would determine our accountability model. Option B is to return all testing data back to a student's home school, where then we would not be accountable at Central Davie Academy, but each of the students' individual scores would go back to their home school. Option C I'd like to describe in a little bit of detail, because that's what I'm going to propose that we're going to adopt as a district. And option D would be for our alternative school and this school district to come up with its own model and present that to the State Board of Education. As a district, we met with Noel Grady-Smith, and Aaron Foyle and I met last week, and we talked about the different options laid out for Davie County Schools. As an alternative school, we believe that option C is our best option. Option C divides our accountability into 3 subgroups. The 3 subgroups are student persistence, which is defined as how many alternative school students start the year and continue to maintain their education in a North Carolina public school, which is, of course, the goal for all of our students, is to maintain their schooling. 20%, the second component is school achievement. This is the same achievement model as all the other schools in the district, so it is important for us to look at end-of-grade assessments, end-of-course assessments, ACTs, graduation rate, and math course rigor. The third component is growth. This is also a similar growth model to the model that the schools, the other schools in our district use. But in an alternative education program, you would look at all 3 of those components: persistence, remaining in school, school achievement, and growth, all with certain percentages to determine whether we as a school, Central Davie Academy, earns a specific grade. This is the model that we would like to adopt, that of the 4 options. If there's any questions about why that one is the one we chose, or any specific questions you might have about this proposal, I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
All I would like to say is the option that you are recommending is probably the best option, because I know with option B, going back to the school site, they were not there, they were not teaching, they did not go through that. So that's kind of unfair for that school site, as well as unfair for the alternative school too, because of the workload. creating our own model. I think you've got a good model here with C and putting that together. So I personally have no problem with C, knowing the students that we're working with.
The one additional item I would like to point out is our classifications or ratings would be, as described, lower in option C in your form, which would be progressing, maintaining, or declining. That data is comparative data from year to year, comparing ourselves to our previous selves from the previous year. It is not comparative data from our alternative school to other districts in the state. It's simply comparing Central Davie Academy last year to this year to next year to the following year. So when we get a classification or a grade of progressing, maintaining, or declining, that will be simply comparing ourselves to previous years.
Any other questions for Ms. Weatherman? Comments? Thank you. At this time, yeah, that's what. At this time, we have a recommendation to adopt option C for the alternative schools progress model. Do we have a motion? We have a motion by Ms. Owens. We have a second by Mr. Drexler. Do we have any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Motion carries 6-0. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Weatherman. At this time, we're moving on to public address to the board, and I will turn it over to Ms. Wilson.
Thank you very much, board members. This evening, we have one speaker signed up, and if the speaker will please come forward and state name and address at the podium. The time will be 5 minutes, and it's quite apparent right there at the board. We look forward to hear from you about matters of general concern and ask you not to refer to any particular personnel or student matter. If you have a concern in that area, Mr. Wallace, who's at the end of the table, will be happy to talk to you privately. So if you'll follow those instructions, please, we would ask Rachel Helm to come and address the board as our only speaker. Thank you. All right, board members, that concludes public comment.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Wilson. At this time, we're moving on to committee and staff reports, and first up is Mr. Wallace to talk to us about 2015-16 early college calendar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Board, you can see the early college high school calendar for next year, and I don't have any voting information for you because all of them put it together. So this is their proposal, and if there are questions, I'll try to be able to I'll address those. And of course, I have Ms. Lynch in the audience who helped put this calendar together as well.
Have any question? Thank you, Mr. Wallace.
Thank you.
Next on our staff reports is driver's education, Ms. Donna McNeil.
Like to bring to your attention again this evening the driver's education program that continues to be reviewed in our North Carolina General Assembly. As our General Assembly begins meeting, please continue to monitor the reports out of the General Assembly for changes that may occur to our driver education program. In a recent conversation that I had with one of the task force members, I was assured that there will be changes, but what and to what extent, that is not, has not been determined. So please expect some kind of changes. At the current rate, we are charging our students a registration fee of $65 to supplement what we receive from the state. If no changes take place, then that could be one of our scenarios for next year. If the General Assembly decides to reduce our funding, then expect that registration fee to go up. If the General Assembly decides that it is not going to fund the driver's education program, based on the enrollment that we have in our driver's education program this year, our public could expect to pay from $300 to $350 per student for the driver's education program. So just want you to be informed, to please continue to monitor and watch what's going on in the General Assembly as it relates to our driver education program. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McNeil.
Ms. McNeil, I know that some students that I knew in the past had opted to do their driver's education from a private organization.
Yes, sir.
For everybody's benefit, do you know what the cost of private driver's education costs?
It's basically the same. It's running anywhere from, it'll vary across the state, anywhere from 300 up. I monitored, I did go out and look at what the rates were being charged in different driving education schools, and the ones in our area are charging anywhere from 300 up, 300 to 350. So it would be in the same range that we are right now.
Any other questions for Ms. McNeil?
I would just say, Mr. Chairman, that the General Assembly would have to authorize the school system to be able to charge any fee that exceeds $65, because that's all that they've authorized at this point. So depending on what they do, if they were to reduce or eliminate the funding and say, public schools, you're still obligated to provide this, but you can't charge any more than $65, then we have another hole in our budget. I don't think they will do that. I don't know where this is going. It's kind of a political football, and if I were a parent of a child who would soon be taking driver's ed, I'd be a little concerned about it.
Thank you, Ms. McNeil.
Also,
too, the public needs to understand, I've said this before, we are required by state statute to provide driver's education for students. Also, that driver ed is a part of their getting their driver's license.
At this time, we're going to move on to curriculum and hour of code, and I will ask Mr. Hugh Lee and Ms. Karen Martin to come up.
We're supposed to have something on the screen right now. Is it coming? Okay.
We're going to challenge our memory.
That's right. Challenge us with what we, oh, there we go. I want to introduce myself. I'm Karen Martin. I am the teacher librarian at William Ellis Middle School.
And I'm Hugh Lee. I'm the technology facilitator at Davie High School.
And we want to tell you a little bit about an initiative that we took part in this year called Hour of Code. First of all, what is Hour of Code? Hour of Code is an initiative that was started by code.org to give every student an opportunity to have an hour exposure to computer programming. The hopes behind this were that kids would lose a fear of computer science. Sorry, I have a loud voice, I just figured it would carry. That kids would lose their fear of computer science and coding and would get a good foundation to perhaps pursue that later on.
The Hour of Code was held December 8th through December 12th of 2014. It was to coincide with the National Computer Science Education Week. And the idea was that you would have these children participate in this activity, not only during that week, but because their website is open year-round, that they could continue to do this even after that week was over.
And why Hour of Code? Why did we want to participate? Well, one of the reasons was that we know from Educational Foundation that computer science and coding not only gives an opportunity for kids to start a firm foundation to what might be a 21st century career, but it also meets the needs of a lot of these critical thinking, problem solving, creativity that employers are looking for kids who are out there going to be in a global competitive market.
The Hour of Code was started in 2013, an organization called Code.org. Code.org was formed by two brothers, twins, Iranians, Harvard educated. Worked at Microsoft early on as developers, early adopters of Dropbox and founders of Dropbox. Their goal, their mission with their organization is to make computer science a regular fixture in school curriculum. And so to that end, that's why they have developed the website. They have had over 15 million users that week that I spoke of, and it continues to grow.
Okay, and we have some photos here of some of our students participating in Hour of Code. At the elementary level, some of you might notice the Elsa and Anna there from Frozen. The theme on Hour of Code was to help Elsa and Anna solve a problem. The kids kindergarten through 5th grade were able to do that, and also most of you might be familiar with the application Flappy Bird. They were able to do Flappy Code and see how that program and that application worked. We had lots of kids who took part not only individually, but we had kids who worked in teams. We had some presentation to whole groups here, as you see Ms. Ratledge presenting to a group at Shady Grove. We also had some kids who were able to program using code the Christmas trees that were at Washington, D.C. for Christmas at the White House, and then they could see their Christmas tree light up. You can see the smiles on their faces. They were very excited for them. It was nice for them to see take away the mystery of coding, for them to see actually how to do this. At the middle school level, they started out with Angry Birds, once again, something they were mostly familiar with. And then they went to a place called Play Lab. Play Lab was a little bit different than just a basic hour of code. It gave them an opportunity to not only learn coding, but to create their own game. And you'll see some students here. They got a certificate of completion when they finished. They were very excited about that because it talks about that they had finished an hour of coding and that this was an introduction to computer programming. And here, a student, whoop, I've got to go back. How do I go back? Put me back. There we go. Sorry, it didn't come automatically populate. On this, a student, it's a video of a student, and he has not only gone through and used the code. If you'll notice on the right-hand side, pretty intricate, pretty complicated, but he had created this whole scenario behind this zombie and this squirrel and their interactions with each other. So not only did he break the mystery behind the code, but he came up with a whole storyline. Future application builder in the process.
At the high school, we took a similar approach. We had 144 students at the high school that completed the hour of code. 6 CTE classes completed the hour of code during their class time. What I attempted to do that was a little bit different, because the hour of code has numerous activities on their website for basically an hour of coding, it wasn't as challenging for some of the high school students. And so what I attempted to do was find other opportunities for them over the 3 days. So if they wanted to come continually, that each day we would challenge them with something new that they had not seen or done the day before. So in addition to using the website Hour of Code, Khan Academy has caught on with this. So they have their own brand of Hour of Code that they do from their website. And then also we used GrokLearning.com, not to be confused with Gronk Learning, but Grok. And that was Python-based. So Python is the language, the 4th generation, that is used for web app development, a lot of gaming, online gaming especially. So each day we tried to challenge them a little bit more and turn them on to other sites to generate their interest. To go along with this, and you know, the idea for doing it at the high school came from our Stematics Club, which is a new extracurricular activity that we have this year. And the idea is to focus on coding and gaming, not just robots, not just programming, but to give them a variety of activities. And what we did with that was we met after school, and we had 40 students that came, so not the CTE students, but we had 40 students that decided they wanted to take some of their time after school and come to one of our labs. So on the first day, we did the hour of code, and everybody earned their certificate, and they, I think, had a lot of fun. And then we found that of those 40 students, 10 of those were female. We found that 5 of those were Hispanic students. They were all boys. And that 10 of those students attended all 3 days. And so the idea is that we want to try to grow the idea of coding. We want to try to demystify it some. We want to try to make computer science some part of our curriculum at the high school. We evidently have a lot of students that are interested in it. We have invited lots of students to our Stematics Club, so hopefully we'll get from membership of 6 to 7 to maybe membership of 30 or 40, as we go forth from here. Thank you.
And although Hugh and I are kind of the spokespeople for this project, because we have a lot of passion about this,
there are lots of people who were involved that we couldn't have done this without. And you'll notice here Ann Davis, Heather Ratledge, Julie Markland, Stephanie Morris, Rachel Morris, Robin Kuntz, Dawn Lowry, Jamie Lyerly, Lauren Walker, Sarah Ryan, Daylene Dupree, and Michelle Smith were also very involved in this process. And we hope, as Mr. Lee said before, that we can make this even bigger and get kids turned on to computer science so that they have a good basis to start to be globally competitive for careers in the future. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We appreciate all your hard work. Yep, Mr. Junker and I were just talking about our coding class at NC State. It definitely wasn't Python. We are moving on now to our pre-qualification of bidders, and Dr. Hartness is going to talk to us about that.
We've come a long way since basic on the TRS 80, haven't we, guys? I had one agenda item before our pre-qualification. I'm going to talk a few minutes about strengthening our public schools, this guide. So,
I apologize.
That's all right. Last month, I shared with you that this guide to strengthening public schools had been released by the North Carolina Superintendents Association. I had been heavily involved in this. Our region, our PTEX groups of superintendents worked on a chapter in this guide, and it has now been released and shared with the legislature and the governor's office, and we're getting a lot of really good feedback. Had some very kind comments that came to us from the North Carolina PTA Association and some other groups that are excited that we are putting out there a vision for what we think public education should be in North Carolina in the future. As I've reviewed this, because it did come from work from different groups of superintendents and compared it to our strategic plan, I feel like we're on a very good path compared to what we're seeing across the state. We believe that it's imperative that North Carolina develops a shared vision, and we're sharing that vision with our legislature. I'm going to walk through and just hit a couple highlights of this document that I think are important. There are several things that it focuses on. It's really trying to focus policymakers on what will make a difference in student achievement, not just about public perception, not just about grading of schools, but what makes a difference with student achievement. Really maintaining and establishing a strategic direction for public education. And there's 6 key goals in this document I hope you will review. Not only is there an executive summary, but there's a full report that gets into some more detail. Number 1 goal is having prepared graduates. So our focus is on students first and making sure that they are prepared graduates. We're looking at international benchmark performance competencies, using multiple measures to gauge student performance. And I talked about some of those formative assessments prior tonight, and making sure that they're college ready. And our high school folks can share with you the instruments that we're using that are aligned with college entrance requirements. We'll continue to use some of those in the future. Some of those up for debate, whether it's ACT or WorkKeys or the SAT. Some discussions are going on about that. The second goal relates to assessment, which we've already talked about tonight, and using high-quality formative assessments to monitor student learning, limiting the number of summative assessments. If you see the number of tests that we're giving at the end of 3rd grade through 8th grade, the number of tests we're doing in the high school, in the career and technical education program, again, the superintendents have said, okay, that's great. That gives you an idea of how students as a group performed at the end of the year, but how does that help our teachers to monitor and to adjust instruction throughout the year? So there's a focus there on changing our assessment models. What we don't want to end up with, and I made this very clear to the task force, is we don't want to end up with 4 EOGs during the middle of the year that you're calling benchmarks. We want them to be short, formative assessments that are useful, not the high stakes and the high stress that we see now. Goal 3 relates to instructional delivery, and that's ensuring that our teachers and students have access to rich content and resources, both in print and online, providing funding for digital tools and resources and support, having a stable timeline for statewide review of curriculum standards. One of the things we hear over and over is we don't try anything long enough to see if it works. And we've seen that with the national standards that have come out. There's debate about that. And we would like some type of stable timeline so that teachers know we're using this for the next 5 years. We're going to have a curriculum review in every subject every 5 years, but there's some stability there. Provide funding for professional development for teachers and leaders. We need to continue to invest in our folks and ensure that that funding is there. The goal 4 deals with digital learning, having a reliable and effective infrastructure. We've seen major hiccups over the past couple years with PowerSchool and Home Base. Those things are stabilizing now. They're getting better. We do have access to more tools that are online, more assessments that are online. That's getting to be a better environment, but it sure isn't perfected yet. Providing mobile devices with rich digital content for teachers and for students for both school and at home. Most school districts can't afford that unless they are more high poverty schools or schools that have additional resources beyond the traditional public schools. Human capital. One of the things the superintendent's pointed out is our most pressing need is to ensure that we have a pipeline of quality teachers coming into public schools. And you heard Amy Stokes tonight. We're very proud of her as our Teacher of the Year. She was part of the North Carolina Teaching Fellows Program. Karen Martin, who just presented to you, was a North Carolina Teaching Fellow. There's other Teaching Fellows in the room. I was in that program. We don't have anything like that in North Carolina to recruit and attract high school students to go into this profession. And that's going to hurt us as a state in the long run. So we are stressing that we need some program such as that to recruit and retain quality candidates into public education. Offering programs and incentives to encourage high school students to come into public education. Strong mentoring and induction programs for the teachers and principals that we hire. And salaries and benefits for our teachers and administrators and superintendents, classified staff, so that we'll be competitive nationally and we're not losing people to other states. There's a whole goal on funding for public education, and one of the reporters who first saw this goal says, well, that's not a very lofty goal. You're asking for North Carolina to rank 25th nationwide in public school funding by 2025. And the committee that worked on this says, well, we feel like that is attainable. So if that's attainable, you can see where we are nationally. And considering where we are, even accounting for cost of living in different areas of the country is not anything North Carolina should be proud of. So we feel like that public education must continue to be a priority in this state. And to get to 25th nationwide by 2025 is an attainable goal if it is indeed a priority. I hope you'll take some time to take a look at this. We spent a lot of time with it. We're going to be using this as our talking points and hopefully as a guide as we discuss the future of public education with our legislature. So just want to share that with you as a board, and we'll be sharing that with community groups as well. Mr. Chairman, that takes us to our next agenda item, unless you have questions about this guide. Last agenda item you have before you is pre-qualification of bidders. January 30th, this past week, was the deadline for contractors who were interested in submitting a pre-qualification statement to present that to our school district. We have a pre-qualification committee that reviewed those statements Friday and yesterday. The 8 contractors who submitted statements all completed the criteria and were acceptable. So before you, on this agenda item, are the names of the 8 contractors who submitted pre-qualification statements and who meet the pre-qualification criteria that we set forth. Doesn't mean that all 8 of these contractors will submit bids when the bid packets go out and are received in March, but it does mean that these are contractors who have pre-qualified, and we're very pleased with the list of contractors who have shown interest in this project.
Have any questions or comments?
It's amazing that we had 8 and that all 8 did qualify. That's great.
Yeah, I agree, Ms. Owens. I think it's a good list of companies, and looking forward to seeing how competitive this thing can be. So we're looking forward to that. If we don't have any other comments about that, I'm going to take the liberty to veer off of the agenda for a moment. And if Dr. Hartness made a comment about it earlier, but on the 22nd, the chamber had their annual gala, and they hand out awards for best small company of the year and a lot of different awards. But I just wanted to point out that Dr. Hartness received the E.C. Tatum Humanitarian Award. He received that very humbly and selflessly, and got up and explained to everybody that he didn't deserve it, that Davie County Schools did. And I just wanted to tell him that he was very deserving of that, and this board's very proud of him, and we were proud to be there and honored to be there with him, and we're excited for him. And I think Mr. Wallace is going to make a few comments and maybe usher in a few special guests to share this moment.
Who's coming through the door? I hope somebody's coming through the door. No, I want y'all to come right here. Y'all come right here with him, please. We've been chairman, board, and guests, I think would be remiss if we didn't take the time. And I'd just like to elaborate just a few more minutes about the award that Dr. Hartness did receive. I tried to set up a few other people, but Dr. Moore, thank you very much for being here. There were I just want to share with you some words that were shared by folks that nominated Dr. Hartness. Just briefly, community leader, helped us to unify, identify. He's this community and being recognized with the Superman Award, which words from the chamber was that it was a landslide that Dr. Hartness won that. Also with the E.C. Tatum Award, Mr. Shane Nixon shared a few words that night, and he said that Dr. Darren Hartness is in fact a humanitarian. Dr. Hartness is a human. He gets tons of credit, and deservedly so, for what he does as a school administrator. He is widely known and respected educator. He is known across the state and in many other states for his work and the things that he does. As many of you are well aware, he was in the top 3 last year to be Superintendent of the Year, the State Superintendent of the Year. Shane goes on to say that he has a human side that should not be missed. He related a story of how him and Dr. Hartness moved to the area at the same time and faced some of the similar battles, and children and their family, and how that Dr. Hartness reached out to Shane and on a human level and became a very close friend. He also says that Dr. Hartness personifies what it means to live among us and to be a part of the community. Some others, folks, some comments. One thing, a statement on the E.C. Tatum Award, it says, vision is the ability to see the future possibilities of the present situation. And I think all of us are well aware of some of the things that we've been battling in this community for quite some time with the high school and our facilities, and how Dr. Hartness was eloquently able to show us a vision, spend 60-plus nights and days out away from his family and presenting and sharing what he felt like the community needed, and sharing the facts in that situation. He immediately got involved in Rotary, his church, and other opportunities. He reaches out to those in need. He visits employees and students and families during times of illness, sickness, and time of loss. His kindness goes far beyond the call of his duty or his job. He's an effective communicator. He's personal. He is very professional. Again, he works tirelessly. He has outstanding integrity and respect and honor among the folks. And just as obviously, many of you are well aware that this board goes into closed session, and we're bound by law not to share things in closed session, but I will tell you, and we had to share some things tonight that would absolutely break your heart, that I'm very privy to in working with Dr. Hartness, and I do get to see him, probably with every emotion. And again, if we were privileged to share some things tonight, it would absolutely rip your heart out of what we dealt with. And once again, not just in the last 2 weeks. On his way home from Raleigh, he stopped by to see one of our children in a hospital that was in a critical situation. I also know that this week, in the last week or so, some folks have taken on our staff and made some comments that were not appropriate. He took the bull by the horns, looked them straight in the eyes, and showed some strong passion. He was human to those people. So yes, he embodies all of these passions and characteristics, but he also is an absolutely phenomenal leader. His daughters are not with us tonight, but he has 2 beautiful daughters, as most of you are well aware. Junior, Molly's a junior at the high school, Davie County High School, and Madison's a freshman at Charlotte, UNC Charlotte. We have with us his father-in-law, Mr. Jerry, and mother-in-law, Jerry and Martha, who are wonderful people. We also have Dr. Hartness's wife, Gail, with us tonight. His mother, sorry. We have Lisa, his wonderful bride, behind us, behind his mother, Gail. And we also have, I invited Dr. Coble, Larry Coble. He chose to be at church tonight instead of be here, which is understandable. I've never met Dr. Moore, but I have heard your name a ton of times, which I know that Dr. Dr. Hartness refers to him as a strong mentor. So again, it's my honor and privilege to recognize on behalf of the school system and our board, and again, I get to work with you, boss, and get to see you in a lot of ways that most people don't. I'm honored, I'm privileged, and I'll say to him, I heard a former sitting president say, my dad loved me so much that I could take chances and fail and risk and grow to be the man I am. Dr. Hartness is like a father figure to many of us, and this staff right here will tell you that. He allows us and cares for us and loves us enough. He'll let us take risk and lead our departments and our groups and still continue to direct us. So Dr. Hartness, this time I would like to ask Dr. Moore. And Dr. Moore, you can give your biography a little bit and share some good things. How's that?
Well, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Well, it is certainly a pleasure to be here this evening, particularly at a school board meeting where I don't have to sit over there. Because you may or may not know, I'm still a superintendent. I served in North Carolina for 30 years, and I've been in South Carolina. This is my 9th year in South Carolina. But I probably, other than Lisa and his parents, know Darren probably longer than anybody in this room. I was a superintendent in Stanley County, and I went there in 1994. It was my first superintendency. I was in the Winston-Salem district, went to Stanley County, and we had an opening for a technology position. An assistant superintendent was interviewing for that position, and they did the screening and interviewing, and I remember a guy's name was Larry Wood, who Darren knows real well. Larry came to my office. He said, man, you need to meet this guy. He is really sharp. He said, now, he's only 25 years old. He said, but he is really good. I said, okay. I'm thinking, 25 years old. Goodness gracious. So I interviewed Darren sometime in the next week, and he was everything that Larry said and obviously more. He came to work for us. I guess I've known Darren for 20 years. I can't remember, was that the next year in 94. And we worked together in Stanley County and went through consolidating school districts. I left there and went to Cleveland County, which is Shelby and Kings Mountain. And it took me about a year to figure out a way to get Darren over to Cleveland County, out of Stanley County. And fortunately, I was able to bring him on board as our chief technology officer. And then he ended up serving as a principal, assistant superintendent, did a lot of things in the school district there. And, you know, if I've figured out how to do anything right in my career, It is a Harrogate people. And I'm going to tell you, that guy right there, he's as good as they come, not just as a superintendent, but as a human being. You know, everything that you heard this evening said about him is just who he is. You know, he is good to people, but he can be strong when he needs to be strong. But it sounds like, though, I did a pretty good job of teaching him how to delegate stuff, too. And if Larry Coble was here tonight, because Larry and I go back a long ways together from my Winston-Salem days, those of you that know Larry, he was one of the best superintendents, too, that I'd ever worked with. And Larry was a mentor for me. But you'd walk into Larry's office, and there wouldn't be a piece of paper on his office. And I'd say, how in the world do you do that? And Larry would say, well, Gene, it's the 3 Ds. Deal with it, delegate it, or dump it. Well, I have mastered that over the years, and Darren will tell you, the yellow stickies that would say, take care of this, see me about this. But that guy could always take care of it. He did a great job, and I'm real proud of him, and I know you are too. And I see some folks in here this evening from Haynes Middle School and East Forsyth when I was there, and Miss Owens over there on the end from our time in Winston-Salem, and Miss Wren or Dr. Wren back here in the back, because I went to Augsburg Lutheran Church whenever we lived in Winston-Salem. So it's nice to come back and see some familiar faces, but it's really nice to come back. And I appreciate Lisa letting me know about this, because Darren would have never told me. I mean, I know he wouldn't have said anything about it. Well, we're real proud of him and glad to be here. So thank you. Y'all done a good job. Y'all got a good guy.
Thank you. So I have to have some discussions with Lisa when we get home. She didn't tell me the truth about why I was coming to the chamber event, and I had no idea this was coming tonight. So I just want to say it was a very humbling experience to receive this award, and it's a very humbling experience tonight to have people that I love and care for here. Jerry and Martha have been like parents. Great to see my mom here, Lisa. And this guy, we talk probably once a week. He is a mentor and a man that I have tremendous respect for, who has really helped guide me through my career. And I'm just so fortunate to be a part of this organization, to have the opportunity to lead here, but also just have the opportunity to work with fantastic people. And it's a privilege and honor to be here. And we have, as I always say, there are great days ahead in Davie County. Thank you.
We are, again, very proud to have you. And it's been an honor to get to know you, and we're glad to have you here, and glad to have your family here with us tonight. And we appreciate everything you do. You have gone above and beyond the call of duty, and we appreciate that. And I think that humanitarian award summed up who you are, and we appreciate everything. At this time, I'm gonna ask for a motion to adjourn and move on. Or do we have anyone else who wants to make comment before we adjourn? All right, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. We have a motion by Mr. Drexler. Do we have a second? We have a second by Ms. Livengood. All in favor? We are adjourned.